Welcome to the definitive guide to lead generation with Facebook ads. We're going to be covering lead form ads versus actually just running the lead gen ad unit on side of Facebook. Whether or not you want to be driving traffic to your website, we're also going to be understanding the qualification and disqualification that you should be running inside of your ads and how to use pixel events both online and offline to understand the effectiveness of each one of your concepts so you can start to really identify targeting and efficiencies by concept to improve conversion rate downstream and find the optimal level of unit economics for your macroeconomic business. Ultimately, what we're going to cover as well is cost and scale, how to evaluate what efficiency is desirable throughout the funnel instead of just saying what a completed actual sale should be worth and what a first and lead target cost should be. So all that being said, we're going to get into it. Once again, I really value that you're going to be here. We're going to make the absolute best use of it possible. If you want more help, go to links.facebookdisruptor.com. I'm here to help. That being said, let's go. So first off, when we're doing lead gen on Facebook, bit of a background. I actually was part of the alpha for the first lead gen ads that were ever run on the Facebook platform. We used it for Nissan to put people in test drives for the 2015 Nissan Sentra. Fun fact, it costs us about $50 to get somebody to fill out a lead gen ad. And when those people showed up to a car dealership, 1 out of 2 people that took a test drive bought a car. That was worth $25,000. So basically we were getting a 250x ROAS on lead gen ads. That's also why ROAS is a completely nonsense number, because that's a completely legitimate data point that is completely nonsense. So remember that when you're thinking about lead gen and you're trying to focus on your business, that you do need to understand the value of what you're doing. But also when you're looking at metrics like ROAS, you're focusing on the wrong part of the business, on something that doesn't mean anything. So all that being said, let's dive into it. Now, Facebook has the lead generation ad unit. This is very common. People use it all the time. Basically, it shows up, you fill out your information, boom. The advantage of the lead gen ad unit is that it's extremely easy for people to use. That's also a downside. The problem with lead gen ad units, number one, is they're disruptive. Not everybody's trying to actually use the lead gen ad unit. And if folks are not the types of individuals who have responded to that lead gen ad unit before, odds are they won't even see your lead gen ad unit, because Facebook is trying to deliver people experiences and content akin to the way that they've behaved before, because estimated action rate is tremendously valuable. So if you're only using the lead gen form type ad unit on Facebook, understand that you are facing the issue of a vast majority of potential users will never see your content. They'll never see that lead form ad. So there is an efficiency in how easy it is to get somebody to convert on that, but there's also a problem in that you are eliminating a large potential audience from ever even seeing your advertising. Now, the other option is using a landing page form, an LP form, basically driving traffic to a website where they fill out a form and then submit a lead. Historically, in my experience, having done this for nearly a decade now, the website-based lead form is more expensive. However, the conversion rate of this traffic tends to be a lot higher. So it is a volume versus quality play. You can use the lead form ad on Facebook, and odds are you're going to get more leads for less cost. However, you are not saturating the entire market. You're actually missing a majority of the individuals. And the quality of those leads tends to be far less. Because it's easier to fill out, there is less of an effort, less of a buy-in, less of an endorsement from the target user to actually care about what it is that you're doing. And because of that, because of the lack of a need for them to lean in, we ultimately face an issue of a lack of their overall intent or a lower quality of it. So understand that between lead gen ads and actually running traffic to a page to fire a lead form, you're ultimately having the conversation of quality versus quantity. In my experience, driving traffic to a landing page to get somebody to fill out a lead form tends to be a far more valuable piece, especially once we start to understand that Facebook does not exist in isolation. And the ability to optimize that landing page to qualify or disqualify people that are coming in. Eliminating folks who maybe it's a high ticket offer aren't going to do it. Eliminating folks who are not interested but are just like tire kickers. Also giving people more context so you can overcome objections. Also, a lead form on a website is something where you can have those individuals fill out a lot of bits of different pieces of information. And at this point, the majority of users on their phone, on their laptops, on their home computers and tablets have their information set up to autofill the majority of forms anyway, which was the primary unfair advantage that lead form ads had on Facebook, is that you were able to get individuals to fill out their information with a click. If you're running on Chrome or Safari, that's probably available for each user anyway. That's already happening. So my point here is the unfair advantage of the lead form has been mitigated by the progress of technology through browsers. That being said, when you do have a lead form on your web page, you are able to fill out a lot of other information. For instance, in my Facebook Ads MBA program, my CMO development and, to be fair, best-in-class education for digital marketing, that's an immersive experience, right? We've got courses, we've got one-on-ones, we've got a community, we've got dynamic curriculum, guest speakers, all this stuff, and it's a one-time payment, no monthly fee. Like, that is a life-changing opportunity for individuals, but does take an investment to get there. I don't just want your email. I want you to be able to understand this is the level of interest. I also want to know, where did you find me? How long have you been following? What is the scale of your current operation? And also, because it does go through a sales funnel that ultimately has you and I having a conversation where you can book a call. Basically, it's a lead form to book a call on my calendar. I want as much information that you're willing to share as possible so that ultimately we can get to a place of, is this the best fit for you? Are you in the right place to take the advantage of the Facebook Ads MBA program? And if that's the case, I also want to know so that before we get on the call, I've been able to do my homework to make sure that I can set this up for your best chance of success right away. Now, that's not something I'm going to get out of the Facebook Ads lead form. But if you were to go to submit.facebookdisruptor.com and fill out an application for my Facebook Ads MBA program, you'll see that there are questions in there. Some of them are essay form. Not that you have to write 1,000 paragraphs, but where are you at right now? What are the problems that you're having right now? Are you ready to make a move today? What are the barriers that you're facing? What are you hoping to learn? What do you know about the program already? And that way I get more feedback on how I can let people know what I'm doing. I can also use that information to direct my creative and also my marketing angles and understand who I'm appealing to and what problems I need to address. I can also improve the quality of the product because I understand what people are coming in and what problems they're trying to solve. I'm also able to see who's there that's not ready. And I'm able to quality control the leads that are coming in. What that ultimately means in that situation is that lead form on my webpage is infinitely more valuable than Facebook lead form could be. Plus, I'm able to do email capture even if you don't fill it out. I'm able to retarget you via other marketing channels because you've been to the page. Maybe what you need is an ebook, or you want one-on-one consulting time, or whatever else that happens to be. Because you've now landed on my page, you're pixeled, you're cookied, and I'm more than likely going to get your email one way or the other, so we can now start having conversations that might last weeks or months before it's the right time for you to come to the Facebook Ads MBA program. That's, again, not something I'm going to be able to do with just a Facebook lead ad. So ultimately, most of the time, I find that the best option for businesses that are trying to do lead generation, that are in control of more than just the front end, and that are ultimately trying to use lead gen as an acquisition strategy towards a relationship-based transaction, for those individuals, taking somebody to your landing page is often a much better opportunity than just having them fill out a lead gen ad on Facebook. Now, I hope that makes sense. If you have any questions to that stuff, please feel free to comment below. If there's other people that want to see this, please let them know. Share this with them. And if you want to know more about the Facebook Ads MBA program, go to submit.facebookdisruptor.com. Check it out. Go to facebookdisruptor.com. You can sign up for the newsletter there as well. It's newsletter.facebookdisruptor.com. And if you want to work with me, it's links.facebookdisruptor.com. Go there and check things out. If you need help, I'm here to help you out. And I really love to make sure that you get as much information as possible so that you can be more successful with less stress. Now, next thing that we want to talk about here is qualification, pixel, and concept. Now, the big thing that we're focusing in on here is if a lead gen is the first touch point in a multi-stage funnel, that's great. Lead, that's a conversion action. I always say that lead gen, the lead is actually more of an add to cart than it is a purchase. And the reason we have to think about it that way is, well, a lead isn't a customer yet. So that being said, what do we do with that information? Well, one, when I'm running conversion campaigns for leads, where my conversion objective is a lead event, not a purchase event, I can run my conversion campaigns just like I would any other direct-to-consumer store or e-commerce. Exact same everything. The problem is there's now touch points that occur afterward. So when we start talking about pixel information and qualification, especially in lead gen, just like you see in the world of view content and add to cart, a lower cost add to cart does not mean that somebody's more likely to buy. As a matter of fact, lower cost leads tend to be lower quality. That's a good general relationship. Now, it doesn't mean that you should only be focusing on the highest cost leads, because there is absolutely a middle ground depending on the scale of your business. And we'll get to that in a bit too. So we're talking about the qualification. This is to say somebody started a lead. Great. That is a customer journey that has been started. And when we're doing marketing, we think of the funnel as a vertical event, which is totally true. But the customer journey is horizontal. And what I mean by that is your Facebook funnel ends with somebody taking a lead. At that point, then they're in an email flow. They're in some qualification for potentially a sales call or whatever else is going on. That lead now has its own customer journey after they've started, but that lead journey starts at the end of the sales funnel. So we have to think of the funnel ends at the beginning of the customer journey through our ecosystem, through our sales process. Now, in that sales process, I will pixel every event that comes after that. And there are different ways of doing that. The easiest way, or the simplest way, is to say if somebody does sign up, pass an offline event to Facebook to say that's a purchase. Great, so now we're running a campaign where the objective is leads, but we can pull in another column that says purchases and see which of these leads ended up in a purchase. And when we start to do that, we're able to understand what type of concepts when running our dynamic creatives results in more effective purchases. And really what we're doing is now to say cost, or better yet, efficiency of each one of those concepts. What type of concept isn't just driving the lowest cost lead, because that doesn't necessarily matter. Which type of concept drives the most or the lowest cost sale? Because different concepts and different messaging are going to bring in people of different value. Are you appealing to everyone or the person that's ready to go? And there's no necessarily best option here. And often, just like in e-commerce, it's a blend of choices. But the point is, especially when you're doing creative testing, when you're using dynamic creatives to build out post IDs to then use inside of your winners, and you're scaling that campaign, that one campaign that you're running for your account, if you can understand the cost per sale, which is an after lead event, you can begin to optimize for that, especially if you get more volume. Now, you might not be able to optimize the campaign towards that purchase event, but you're going to be able to optimize your decision making on understanding how effective is this concept versus another one. If you want to go even deeper, and I highly recommend that you do this, if you have other questions in that lead form that do allow you to qualify individuals. For instance, when you go to the Facebook Ads MBA program at submit.facebookdisruptor.com, I have a lead form there. Now, in that lead form, I have questions of what's your current daily spend? What are your current problems? Where are you trying to go? Are you ready to get started today? There are options. In general, people that convert tend to answer some of those questions in a similar fashion. And ultimately, what I'm able to do is I'm able to qualify that lead as good, as a bad lead, a good lead, or a great lead. So then what I can do is pass that back to Facebook. So instead of it being lead and then purchase, I can have lead and then a qualification of a custom column inside of Facebook because I'm passing back an offline conversion event. This is a bad lead. This is a good lead. This is a great lead. So now I'm able to disqualify concepts. If they bring in a bunch of bad leads, I don't need to wait until I get those people to sign up to know whether that lead was good. Because over dozens and dozens, we're closing in on 100 students in the last year joining the Facebook Ads MBA program. I have a very good idea of how you've answered those lead forms to understand whether or not you're a good or bad lead. Now, it doesn't mean I'm going to not take the bad leads because, believe me, I get people from all over the world. I had somebody sign up last night that is working in an ad agency in Colombia that was spending, they were getting paid like what a normal US media buyer makes in a week, they were making in a month. And they'd saved up in order to join. I also have other folks that are spending 20, 30, 50 million dollars a year. They're ready on the drop of a hat. So the point here is, what I can do is begin to optimize my creative concepts in testing to lead me to a place where I am more likely to drive good or great leads. And I can understand what concepts are getting the attention of individuals who I would otherwise classify as a bad lead. And you can do this inside of your business. I've done this in tons of businesses, from cars to coaching to real estate. I've done this in insurance. I've done this in will prep. I've done this, and I mean, I could go on and on. The point is, this is how you can operate somebody using the lead business model, but still using conversion objectives. And ultimately, when you are qualifying individuals using pixel information to understand where they're coming from, you get the idea with your dynamic creatives, especially when you're starting to get the feedback of that lead form, how best to optimize your marketing efforts to deliver a desirable cost and scale. Because once you start optimizing towards specific types of people, because you know the concepts that are dragging in the highest quality individuals, then you can start to change your sales messaging and your onboarding experience and your call scripts, etc., to raise your conversion rate on those people. And so just like in an e-commerce store where you shouldn't be running ads to 5 different products, run ads to one and improve the AOV, the LTV, and the conversion rate of that one thing, because all of your data is going to one piece. In lead gen, we do the same thing. Don't try to be everything to everybody. Figure out what you can afford to spend on, what the best investment with that money is, and ultimately how you can improve the conversion rate and value of that traffic and of those leads by improving your creative. Because your ads are doing the targeting for you, right? In Facebook, ads do the targeting. Every ad makes its own lookalike audience. And every ad defines who that ad is going to appeal to. Again, these are inarguable points, and this is getting down to macroeconomics and then of your unit economy of scale, what you're trying to do. And we'll get to a bit more of the cost and scale here in a minute. But the point here is understand what you're doing that is setting up the next stage of the business for success, and lean into those things that drive a higher value, higher confidence, more scalable solution. And when you focus in on that, the net result is more revenue for less work. And that's really what it's all about. I know we just covered a lot there. If you have any questions about that stuff, please do not be afraid to comment below, reply back, DM me. I'd love to be able to help you out. If there's other people that you want to make sure that see this, feel free to tag them, share it with them, let them know. I'm also sending this type of stuff out every single week in the newsletter. You can sign up for free at newsletter.facebookdisruptor.com. It's the shape of disrupt to come. Every single week, we've got multiple articles and videos, interviews, and blogs. So check that out. Now, the last thing that I want to focus in on here is cost and scale. Now, cost and scale of lead generation has very little to do with initially, how much does your lead cost? Because that doesn't necessarily matter nearly as much as everything else down the funnel. And this is something we've been talking about a lot inside the Facebook Ads MBA program lately. And I felt like it was really helpful for everybody else. And mind you, if you want to jump into the MBA program, you can go to submit.facebookdisruptor.com. You can go through my lead form. We can have a conversation. That all being said, the cost and scale. Remember we talked about before that your marketing funnel is a vertical piece with multiple steps. Now, there is ultimately, at the end of the day, a unit value per lead, right? How much money did we make? How many leads did we get? Say we got 100 leads and we made $1,000. Theoretically, that means that a lead is worth $10. That is the bottom of the funnel on Facebook. Your leads are worth $10. Now, if only half of those people actually showed up to sales calls, that means that a booked call where somebody shows up is actually worth $20. The point here is we can now start to understand horizontally a completed sale. Let's say it's worth 500 because out of the 100 leads, 50 of them showed up to a call, and let's say 2 of them bought. That's not the world's best conversion rate, but hey, the purpose of this example, we can follow this through. That means that we have a $500 AOV and a 2% or 4% conversion rate after the sales call. We have a 50% show up rate. Well, that means each one of those things has a different monetary value based on the volume of items coming into that space. So an easy way to say that you could afford spending $20 for a lead instead of 10 is to get your close rate from 4% to 8. Because now those 50 leads that came through, well, instead of being worth 1,000, they're worth 2,000. So out of the 100 leads that you drove, you've now made $2,000 in revenue. That means that you could spend $20 for a lead. Now, where this really works out is when you're starting to work on evaluating that sales funnel and the customer journey. Remember when we talked about in the qualification and pixel by concept, what concepts are more likely to drive good or great leads? Those concepts, you might be able to, they might be worth $15 or $25. Maybe that concept's worth 25. And you're like, well, you just said the leads are only worth 20. Yeah, because if you have also bad leads in there, if you have some $5 or $10 value leads and some $25 value leads, the net value of each lead might be $20. But the point is you also have a balance. And so what we can start to do is optimize towards the highest value leads that we can. The leads that are more likely to be worth more money. Because we're starting to itemize the value by the volume through every stage of the funnel and then each part of the customer journey because of the volume decides conversion rate. The value ultimately decides the unit economic of each user throughout that journey. Now, sometimes, especially once you're starting to focus on one primary concept, it becomes harder to get that lead for cheaper. But that also means because all the people are looking more and more similar, it becomes way easier to improve the conversion rate of those leads. So my point here is that you have to understand, in the world of lead gen, cost per lead is one very small piece of the puzzle. And when you're trying to scale a business, you ultimately have to understand, where is the bottleneck? Where is the thing where you are ultimately limiting your potential? Sometimes it's in my leads cost too much. Sometimes it's in, well, we're starting to drive a whole ton of leads of a new concept and our sales script doesn't appeal to them, but those people that do convert through that concept are worth way more money. Maybe what I should be doing is instead converting, focusing on a better sales, journey or pitch to those individuals. And if I can improve their conversion rate, now my value per lead on Facebook goes from $10 to $30. If we have a $500 value on a converted sale, what happens if we get to 10% conversion rate on the people that show up to the call? Now we're really starting to be able to afford way more money. Let's use the same exact unit economics, right? 100 people convert. 100 people sign up. 50% of them show up for the call. 5 of them buy. Now, each one of them is worth $500. You can spend $25 at the lead. What happens if you get 75% of people to show up for the sales call? How much more money can you spend on a lead? And really, this gets down to focusing on the unit economics of every part of your funnel. And you might not be good at math, and that's totally fine. But at the end of the day, what you need to be focusing on is, what are these actual measurements? What is the value and the volume of the customer journey by part of the funnel vertically, and then customer journey horizontally after they've given you their information? When you start to look at lead generation in that way, you can begin to tremendously change the landscape of how you're operating a business. And I'll give one very extreme example, but 100% the thing that I've done in my history. I used to be director of growth for a business called My Life. It is a 9-figure SaaS business. The person who was running the Facebook ads before me was very happy because they were getting a $15 registration, basically a $15 lead cost, with a conversion rate of about 25%. Now, the product itself is about $30 a month, which means that it's a 60-day to break even. $30 a month. After 2 months, that person gives us $60. Lead cost is 15. 1 in 4 of them converts. So each lead is basically worth $60. We net out after 60 days, and after 60 days, we're profitable. When we started to break things down in this way, we got our actual cost per acquisition down to $8. From 60 to 8. Our Facebook ad spend went from $3,000 a day to $50,000 a day at scale. We ultimately ended up cutting back by over $30,000 a day to get an extra $1 million a month in EBITDA. That's the change when you get this stuff right. That being said, welcome to the definitive guide to how to run high-ticket offers with Facebook ads. And I know a lot of people are trying to run high-ticket offers. We're talking $500, $600, $800, $1,000, $2,000, $5,000, $10,000 offers. Places where you cannot leave the learning phase with Facebook reliably, where you cannot use conversion campaigns to reliably drive to overall success. We're going to talk about the volume and quality of traffic that you can bring and what other objectives you can try to focus on Facebook. You can also focus on unit economics. We're going to cover all of that to understand how your business is going to get covered, and ultimately how you can use Facebook to amplify profitable opportunities for your business so you can use these high ticket items to load your funnel with really high quality individuals. We're going to break all of that down, plus the ads and the types and all the different metrics that you need to be focusing on. And let's get started. First off, I just want to say thank you very much. I know you could be literally anywhere on the internet right now, and the fact that you're here means the world to me. I'm going to make sure that this is absolutely of the best value to you. And if you need any other stuff, please go to links.facebookdisruptor.com and we can start to work together. So let's get started. Now, if you are running high ticket offers where your cost per sale is so high that you can't leave the learning phase, maybe your item is $200 or $2,000, and you can't drive that 25 to 30 conversions a week that it takes to leave the learning phase, and you can't get consistent results to do creative testing and all these other items, what are you supposed to do? Because everybody tells you in Facebook, you should be driving conversion campaigns all the time. And you know what? They're right if that's possible for your business. However, Facebook is phenomenal and ultimately doing one thing. Facebook is a market research and intent creation device. If you cannot utilize the budget appropriately to accomplish those business goals, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't be using Facebook. What it means is you need to be using Facebook to accomplish what it can do at scale to ultimately leverage your business most appropriately for the things that are ultimately the best overall results for your business. Now, what this ultimately means is you have to understand, what can your business do at scale? What can you afford to do? So let me give you an example of this. One of my students inside the Facebook Ads MBA program, wildly successful guy out of New Zealand, he's running a bespoke, high-end fly fishing reel business. Now, his reels might run $800 to $2,000. They're amazing. It's called Epic Fly Reels. Great guy. Now, the problem is you would have to spend $5,000 to $10,000 a day to get one campaign with a very limited number of ad sets to ultimately drive conversions on just the sale of that product in order to use Facebook to make sales on a conversion campaign. Now, what we can do instead is focus on, what do we have in the business that actually works? What can we afford to do? Now, you see, a lot of people will say, well, let's just focus on add to carts because we can drive a lot of them. Do you really want a lot of add to carts? Is driving a lot of people that are not interested in buying but just want to abandon cart actually good for your business? Well, there's an argument to be said, well, if we get a bunch of add to carts, eventually going to convert them. Sure. But is an add to cart actually worth any monetary value? Maybe, if you can get down to the unit economic of what is an add to cart actually worth to me? Is an add to cart worth $1? Is an add to cart worth $5? Well, if you can make that work, that's great. The problem is once you start to optimize Facebook campaigns to running to just add to carts, I'm going to guarantee you're going to get a much higher volume of add to carts, and the unit value, the unit economic of each one of those conversion events is going to drop dramatically. So then you say, well, let's just get page views. Let's just get a bunch of traffic to the site that maybe wants to view something. We'll get view content will be our conversion objective. Great. But again, what's the unit value of a view content? Now you could say, well, if I get X amount of view contents a month and I make X amount of money a month from everybody that comes to my site, I know that a view content is worth $1 or 50 cents, right? Whatever it happens to be. Now the problem is, again, just like add to carts, if you are focusing on just view content, you are focusing on driving a high volume of users that don't have a direct monetary value. And something, well, you can say, well, I'm going to use that to drive up the volume of my retargeting audience. Sure. Is retargeting actually a good idea for you? Again, if it's super high ticket, I'd argue the answer is no. Generally speaking, retargeting is a bad idea on Facebook because Facebook is absolutely best at curating customer journeys. So if you're just trying to get a whole bunch of people who aren't really legitimately interested in coming to your store in the hopes of trying to then force your advertising on a selection of folks who don't care, to try to then cherry pick just the folks that actually do care, and hopefully for that to even work, you have to get your costs from $500, $1,000 to make a sale down to $20 or $30 in that retargeting audience just so you can spend enough money to get it out of the learning phase. Is that realistic? No. So even if that were to work, even if you were able to use Facebook in a way that it's not designed to be used because it's not an intent or demand-based platform, it's not email, it's not search. Even if you were able to make that work, the unit economics for you to be able to actually run that campaign at a way that would allow you to monetize that attention reliably and at a profit is extraordinarily unlikely. You would need a 5, 10, 20, 50x efficiency improvement just to be able to run that at scale. And while you're doing that, you're also providing so many experiences to folks that don't want to see your advertising that your CPMs and your advertiser score are going to be very negatively affected. As your advertiser score comes down because you're forcing your ads on the people that don't give a shit about you, your CPMs are going to rise because you are a bigger liability to Facebook's business model. You present yourself as somebody that is not algorithmically aligned with Facebook, and disrespecting their user base is bad for business. So ultimately, we have to figure out, what can you do? What works in your business for you to actually make money? Where is your business currently successful? Because ultimately, Facebook is a business model amplification and market research device. So now we have to really look at what works for you. Now, to go back to the fishing rod business, they know that basically everybody that opens an email is worth about $2. That's great. So now we have a question of, well, how do they run their business? The majority of their business is done through email and customer service because it's super high ticket. People don't buy nearly that often. So the LTV is hard to get a multiple on, and it's a very high AOV product. But we know that if we make a connection with that customer over time, and you see this exact same thing also happening in coaching businesses. We did the exact same thing working for cars and homes. Really what you're trying to do is generate trust so that personal relationship allows for a high ticket purchase. Now, with that being said, what do we do? Well, in this case, he knew the inflection point for his business was, if I get an email, if I get somebody to open an email, it's worth about $2. Now, maybe that doesn't mean that everybody that opens an email buys. That's fine. But every time he sends an email, which is maybe twice a week, when somebody opens it, the unit rate of that value to my business is worth $2. Now, what's great about that is it means, okay, so what we need to do is say, your best foot forward for making a sale is an email-based customer relationship. That's what's going to do best for cash flow for your business. So why don't we focus on Facebook to generate a higher volume of people who are eager to accept and open your emails? If we then focus on Facebook as effectively a lead gen platform to grow volume of opportunities for customer relationships, now we can say, well, maybe we get an email for $5 or $10. Maybe not everybody opens. Maybe your value of an email open goes from $2 to $1.75. But if we know we're getting you an extra 500 or 1,000 emails a week, addresses, ultimately over time, you're getting a higher volume of people to open those open an email from you just because you have a higher mountaintop to shout from. What ultimately works here is you're going to have to figure out the volume and unit economics of this, and we'll get to that in a minute. This is one example of how this works. Now, you see a lot of high-end coaches talking about doing this so you just get sales calls coming in, right? And then you hire a salesperson to handle all of that. And all you're really trying to do is just get sales calls coming in because you know there's a close rate on a sales call. If you have a 1 in 5 close rate, if you have a 5% close rate on sales calls, you need 20 sales calls in order to make a sale. So now you have to pay the person to handle those sales calls. So ultimately you have to figure out how much does it cost to get a sales call. If you multiply that by 20, then you know how much it costs to make a sale. And if there's a profit on that, plus you pay that person, that sales call person, your salesperson, to ultimately do sales calls for you, you can figure out how that business works. Now, what ultimately we're getting here is there's a lot of different ways of doing this. We also see this work in the world of just high-end retail. One of the people in the Facebook Ads MBA program, we were working on, they have a high-end retail business. They're doing couches and home furniture where they might be $500 to $1,000 to $2,000, $5,000. Now they know the majority of their sales comes from folks that are coming into the store. So again, what does their business actually make money on? What is the core foundation of their core principles? What are they really good at monetizing? How is their business built to monetize attention? And then how do we amplify that so that they have the greatest opportunity of producing more revenue and profit? How do we do that in a way that we can test, in a way that we can measure, in a way that we can deliver consistent results and continue an investment in, so that ultimately we can monetize that at a profit? That's what it really comes down to, especially if you can't use Facebook for conversion campaigns. And there's plenty of people that cannot afford to do that. Maybe you only have 20, 30, 40 bucks a day. You can still run Facebook campaigns. You don't always have to go conversion. That's just a fallacy. Now, before we get started on the next part, I want to know if you have any questions, please feel free to comment below. Please subscribe if you like this video, hit like. Let me know anything else I can do for you, and let's get started on the next piece. The next part about this conversation is the volume and quality unit economics. And this is tremendously important. How does your business currently make money? Now, we talked about with Epic Fly Rods what the value of his emails are, right? We talked about with the furniture business. He knows he makes money when people come into the door. Now, ultimately, we have a unit value of a person that comes in the door. What it comes down to is you need to figure out a math equation that ultimately, with very high confidence, lets you know the unit value of the actions that people take before they come into your store. We also have to know that the conversion rate of these actions is not static. Almost everybody that I see talking about how to scale Facebook ads assumes a consistent conversion rate. Well, the honest truth is, when you amplify the volume of your investment into Facebook, when you spend more money, your ads are going to appeal to a slightly lower quality person, because every ad is making its own lookalike audience. That's how content works in an optimized CPM platform. If you disagree with that, that's fine. You're dead wrong. There's empirical data going back a very long time to say that's actually how the platform functions. There's other videos we can dive on that. If you have more questions about that, please comment below and I'm glad to answer them. That being said, what we're getting to here is trying to understand what are the most static benchmarks in your customer journey. Where is the inflection point where you can afford to amplify that part of the journey? Because you are able to drive enough actions that you can use Facebook's machine learning to your benefit. Because that's the real point here. If you can't get out of the learning phase, then the campaign you're running doesn't actually have that much value. And that's a hard truth that you're going to have to accept. So, if you have $500 a day to spend, realistically, that's $3,500 a week. You can probably afford to run things where your CPA or your CPL, your desired cost per action, is roughly around the $100 to $120 mark. Because you're driving between 25 and 40 actions a week, you're going to be able to leave the learning phase at a bare minimum. Now, if you can get actions for, say, $20, you might be able to spend $100 to $150 a day. So you have to understand, what is your available budget for the amplification of your business? Based on that budget, where throughout the customer journey are you ultimately able to find a place that you can afford to choose to amplify that aspect? And then from there, focus on working on the core competencies of your business to monetize that attention. And if you're hearing me, what I'm actually not saying is what conversion event in the funnel should you optimize towards, because that's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about just making more ad cards. We're not talking about making more view content. Because ultimately, if you're running a conversion objective, you should be optimizing towards the end goal. You need to be optimizing towards the end goal of that part of the funnel. And in high ticket spots where your item might be $200 or $10,000, the end goal for you might very well be, where do we pass it off from digital marketing to a real person? So maybe you have a sales team. Maybe you have customer service. Maybe you have email. Maybe you have salespeople. What we're getting at here is you start to get to the point of, how do we afford to use machine learning to drive a higher volume and higher quality person and volume of people and quality of people into that inflection point in our business? Where is a bottleneck in our customer journey that we can actually afford to amplify the volume of? Because we know once we get somebody to this point, we're going to be able to monetize them with a certain level of confidence. Where is the conversion rate fairly static? And not only is that conversion rate fairly static, but that event is something we can afford to do. That's where we really start to get down to how to use Facebook to run high ticket items. Now, several examples of this we've already gone over, but another one that we see often is if you are running a high ticket training program, for instance, and you know what I need is to fill my calendar with sales calls, because maybe I'm 1 out of 10 sales calls where somebody talks to me. You don't have a salesperson, it's just you. 1 out of 10 calls is a conversion. And that conversion is, say, 10 grand. Great. Now, right now, you're sitting at a spot where you get 10 calls a week. So you're making 1 new customer. 10 calls a week is roughly maybe 2 calls a day. If you want to double or triple your revenue, really it comes down to, how do we get 20 calls a week? Now, you can obviously also work on the sales pitch. You can work on other things, but this is the front end. What are we asking Facebook to do? Because the Facebook ads aren't going to help what happens after somebody talks to you. Now, they can help in priming that individual to be a higher quality. Absolutely. And that also goes down to the qualification and disqualification that happens throughout the funnel. But ultimately, what we're really getting to is the way you double your growth in business is doubling the amount of sales calls that you have. So how much does it cost to get somebody to have a sales call with you? Now, in my experience, I've done this with a $10,000 thing, and it cost me roughly about $50 to $70 to get somebody to book a sales call. And I did about, let's assume that was the blended net cost, baking in the no call, no show. So the actual people to show up to a call, get on a call with me, let's say it was $50. If I wanted to scale a $10,000 offer and I needed to double the amount of sales calls that I had, and I was currently having 10 and I wanted to get to 20, that meant that I had to spend roughly enough money to get an additional 10 sales calls a week. That's $500 a week. That's a reasonable expectation of a conversion for me. Now, for me to actually do that, that means that realistically, 10 events a week is not enough for me to really get out of the learning phase. So what I was able to do was say, instead of spending $500 a week, let me spend $1,000 or $2,000 a week so that I'm getting way more sales calls than I can actually handle. And what that does is it creates a bottleneck. So now I can do a quality assessment of those leads for the sales calls so that I can improve my conversion rate on those sales calls, because I'm disqualifying everybody that's not good for my business. Now, ultimately what this means is maybe I'm spending $2,000 a week, and as a result, I'm making an extra $10,000 a week because I'm getting 1 extra person to come through a $10,000 offer. Now, at scale, there's a point where this breaks down because of the amount of time that you have. Now, let's say you want to 5x that. You probably have to hire somebody else to do sales calls. Their conversion rate is probably going to be lower than yours. But once you find out the unit economics of the volume and the quality of every person that's coming into your store or coming into your funnel, now you're sitting at a spot where you can legitimately begin to plan your media. And at that point, we have to start focusing on amplifying the quality of the individuals, because volume creates an issue where you can't handle all of the opportunity, and you're going to get, your conversion rate's probably going to go down. So how do we then start to turn the Facebook machine into something that understands what is a good or a bad lead? And at that point, when we're doing lead gen, what I often do, and I suggest to everybody that's running lead gen inside the Facebook Ads MBA program, what I'll do with them is say, let's pass back offline conversion events. Of all of the ads that we've run, which ones actually turned into students or buyers or people that took that offer? When we pass that back, we're going to start noticing by concept, by ad, which ads are more likely to drive people that are more successful. we can retroactively get a cost per acquisition, even though we're not running Facebook ads to that acquisition event. Because we say, oh, we drove 4,000 leads, and out of that 4,000 leads, we got 50 customers. Great. Out of that situation, which that conversion rate may or may not be good for you, but we can understand, well, certain ads had a much lower cost per acquisition than others. We can start optimizing towards those ads that are better at driving a higher conversion rate customer into our sales funnel. Now our sales calls conversion rates goes way up and we're making way more money, and we can even initially lower our investment at the growth of the business and still profit more. That's the kind of thing that we're talking about, especially when we're going on high ticket items. Again, if you have any questions around any of this stuff, please feel free to comment with any of them. Please feel free to ask. If you're liking this video so far, please smash the like button. Don't be afraid to subscribe. Go to links.facebookshopper.com if you want to know more things to help. Now, let's break down to the last piece here, because I think it's incredibly important. What we need to understand is that Facebook ultimately amplifies profit opportunity. So what we are trying to do more than anything with any type of campaign that we're running on Facebook or literally any other paid media platform, especially optimized CPM platform, where your goal is not to generate a ROAS, because if you're still running Facebook ads or TikTok ads or YouTube ads on a basis of a ROAS, you are years behind what you should be looking at. Instead, we are looking at intent creation to amplify the volume and quality of the users within our funnel so that we can more effectively monetize the intention that we are creating, so that when we have more cash positive investments that we make, for instance, sales calls or search or email, etc., where our exchange rate on our investment there is far better for our business's bottom line, then Facebook's job is just to amplify that. Just like you think of, well, Facebook, I'm going to run more prospecting so I can get more retargeting. I understand that. Now let's use Facebook properly. Facebook is the entire platform is intent creation, effectively top funnel, so that you can then monetize that attention through search, email, sales calls, whatever. Because those, they're not the retargeting place. They're the mid and bottom funnel of the customer journey. Don't look at it as Facebook has a piece of the funnel and I have a mid funnel and a top funnel and a bottom funnel. It is, what are the steps in the customer journey towards a conversion, especially in high ticket? Facebook's job is the first section of that journey. But ultimately, we have to understand what are the second, third, fourth, fifth steps to get somebody to buy. We should be focusing on making that journey as simple as possible. We should be focusing on making that journey as efficient as possible. But Facebook's job is ultimately to amplify the opportunity of that successful funnel. Now, one of the easiest ways of mapping this out, especially if all of this work is done on a website, is you can use Google Analytics. Now, this is one of the few times where I actually think Google Analytics is of any value. And what you can do is say, of everybody that lands on my initial landing page, how many people make it to step 2? How many people make it to step 3? How many people buy on step 4? Let's say you have a 4-step funnel. And that's a really easy way of saying, I have URL A. How many people from URL A make it to URL B, C, and D? This is called funnel analytics. Now, when you go through that, you're going to see that there's maybe 20% of people that land on landing page A make it to landing page B, and then 80% make it to C, and then like 90% make it to D. Great, just get way more people into funnel A, or make it from 20%, 30 or 40 to get to step B. Once you find out where the bottleneck is in your business, you can ultimately focus on how do I overcome this bottleneck or make that bottleneck more efficient. If I've got a giant hose going down to like a garden hose, down to like just a spigot, if I want to get more coming out the backside, there's a certain spot where I'm losing the majority of the attention that I'm paying for and the attention that I'm generating. That intent is getting lost somewhere down the way. So if we can ultimately figure out where that intent is getting lost, we have the option of either amplifying the volume of people that go into that system, basically saying, well, if I know I get 80% of people, they go from point A to point B, drop off, but after that, like 75% of people convert and I want to double my business, I probably just need to get maybe 2.5 times as many people in the front end. That's a realistic expectation. I'm probably going to double the business. Now, that is what you use Facebook ads for. So in that case, you're using Facebook ads not to drive more add to carts, not to do more view content, it's not to do more link clicks, but what is that actual action that is step one of your business where you know you have a highly converting funnel after the fact? And then how do we choose that as the conversion event of our campaigns? Now, maybe that's lead gen. Maybe that's a sign up. Who's to say that your conversion campaign couldn't be a newsletter? And instead of being a purchase, it could be a sign up or a subscription. Who's to say that that conversion event has to be somebody giving you their credit card information? That conversion event might just be they went from step A to step B. Now Facebook is going to be able to use machine learning to get people who are more likely to go from first touch to step B. Now you're using Facebook's machine learning and database systems to ultimately generate a more effective over time version of getting somebody through that funnel. So Facebook is working on amplifying not only the volume of people that come into step A, but also working on the quality of people so that step A gets to step B faster or more effectively or more efficiently, which ultimately improves the conversion rate of all of the traffic that you're getting down the funnel. So you have to start looking at the funnel in this way. And again, it's not top of funnel, mid funnel, bottom funnel. It is step 1, 2, and 3 in the touch points of your relationship with those people. And the same thing happens in low ticket, but generally speaking, that happens by the ad and then the landing page and then the checkout process. That's step 1, 2, and 3. In high ticket, it has way more to do with the advertising, the development of that relationship, and then understanding the financial and time commitment to get somebody to make that purchase. That's very much the same thing as ad, landing page, checkout, but in this case, it's ad, relationship, and then monetization. Same steps, but instead of top, mid, and bottom, where you're still trying to get somebody to actually want to make a buying behavior, you're trying to get them to the point where you're having a relationship that you can monetize. Then you can work on the quality of your ability to monetize that relationship. Then you can understand where are you really strong, drive as many people to the inflection point of where you are really good. How do you afford to do that? And then you make that inflection point better. And if you can figure that out, which takes time, you are going to be massively successful. In my own personal experience, I've done this to the point where we took a business that was running on average maybe 50, 60, they were doing okay. It was a $60,000 to $80,000 a year plus side business. Good for the solo, they were able to quit their day job. Figuring this nut out, 10x that business in about 8 months. Because we figured out, okay, well, we can improve the volume by about 5x. And then we can improve the inflection point by about 2x. That resulted in a 10x improvement across the business. And it had nothing to do with targeting add to carts, because that doesn't mean anything. I've also done this at extreme high levels of scale, where we were running a 9-figure SaaS business. And we figured out the inflection point was getting somebody to do a trial on the software. Now, somebody had overcorrected before me and tried to get just to a registration to even get into an email address. The problem was that inflection point wasn't highly enough converting. We weren't able to monetize that attention effectively enough. So we then focused on the second inflection point. And we got the cost for a trial down from $60 to $8. The conversion rate after that more or less stayed the same. And the result was the Facebook ad budget went from $3,000 a day to $50,000 a day. That's a 9-figure SaaS business. We ultimately cut back our Facebook budget by over 30 grand a day to save $1 million a month in EBITDA. And it was a tremendously profitable business. But that's the way you need to be thinking about this stuff. So again, if somebody says you need to be optimizing your conversions, they're wrong. If somebody says you should focus on add to carts, view content, they're wrong. If you're not looking at the stages of your customer journey, figuring out the bottleneck, and then amplifying the volume to that bottleneck, and then the efficiency of it, you're solving the problem the wrong way. That being said, welcome to the definitive guide to Facebook's Performance 5. Now, this looks an awful lot like the Power 5, and to be fair, most of it is fairly remedial, and we've been talking about the core elements of this stuff here on this channel since its inception. These are things that hopefully aren't new, but if they are new, that's amazing, because this is a great opportunity for you to go from a place of stress to a place of success, for you to reduce your amount of workload and increase the amount of scale and opportunity that you have. We're going to cover, first off, 3 big things that have been remedial. We've been talking about them for many, many, many years. And if you're not doing it, now is a great time to get started. And we're going to close out with 2 other things that we haven't necessarily directly addressed here, but we absolutely should, including one thing that's going to turn all those Facebook marketing expert calls that annoy the hell out of you into giant checks from Facebook for you to spend their money to scale your account, to show them what's working and what isn't. And I highly, highly recommend you do it, because it'll also tremendously help your understanding what Facebook's doing for your entire environment. That being said, I know you could be literally anywhere in the world right now, and you've chosen to be here, and I want to say, first off, for that, thank you. I'm going to try to respect your time and make sure that we use this time that we have together to be as helpful as possible. If you're watching on YouTube, please go ahead and subscribe, hit like, drop a comment down below letting me know the parts of the Power 5, or in this case now the Performance 5, that you really enjoy, and any questions you might have. Also, go ahead and read the description. There's a great long article in there, and you'll also find links to other resources like the Facebook Ads MBA program, which is my flagship training for CMO and business development, how I'm taking businesses that are no longer startup, but in scale up to exit, how we make that happen. You can also sign up for the newsletter, which is the shape of Disrupt to Come, and don't miss out on brand new opportunities like brand new courses from Disrupt to School and a lot of other great interviews and other resources. With that being said, let's get to it. So, Performance 5 is out. It's officially public. It's been public for a while. Now, some of us have been using these principles for many, many years. I was part of the Facebook Disruptor group that initially put together what was called the Power 5, which was the big change when Facebook became an optimized CPM first environment, which basically made things like retargeting and interest groups and ABO completely obsolete, and really paved the way for the new wave of success that everybody saw starting in 2018, 19, and 20. And why now Facebook is honestly hasn't been this easy to make money and this low touch since maybe 2015, 2016. Like, it is easier to scale a business on Facebook today than it may have ever been in your entire career. And I've been doing this for 10 years, and it's extremely exciting. That being said, what are these 3 things that we want to get started with? The first one, basic account simplification. Let me do a bar none statement. If you are trying to solve a problem by making things more complicated, you're doing it the wrong way. I sadly still see people preach having 3, 4, 5, 10, 20, 30 campaigns inside the Facebook ad account. This is never a good idea. I mean, I can think of the use cases where more than 5 campaigns, where we weren't talking about Facebook case studies they were funding, which we'll get to later in a minute, where those weren't the case, where that had any actual merit. I still see a lot of folks talking about that we should be doing this. We should still be using audiences like interest groups and lookalikes and retargeting and ABO. And to be honest, since 2018, we shouldn't have been. Performance 5 is a doubling down on why we shouldn't. And something we're going to touch on a little bit later also will let us prove that these things are a bad idea. So remember, account simplification. Keep it simple, keep it steady. That's how you scale. The point of Facebook and all growth and acquisition marketing is primarily to amplify the flow and the volume and the quality of business coming into your funnel and business model. Figure out what the best investment for you to be able to what is the best type of attention that you are going to be able to monetize with confidence? And then how do we amplify that so that we can make the most amount of money with the fewest moving parts, so that everything that happens after the click becomes much easier to do? Are you promoting 5 products? Why? Do you have 14 different audiences going? Why? Now you might say, well, because I get a better performance and all this stuff. How many different types of customers and how many different customer journeys and how many different types of products are you having to test landing pages for, creatives for, email flows for? What about inventory control? What about customer service? What about all of these other things that add cost? Just because the ROAS on Facebook is good doesn't mean it's a good idea for your business. And I can't tell you how many times I see people chasing this complication and short money route to getting the best ROAS so good that they go out of business because they forgot about cash flow and business development. And ultimately that means that they might make a buttload in Q4 and close up shop by February. Because ultimately you can be the best hunter in the world, but if you don't know how to farm, any time where you go 3 or 4 days without killing something, you're dead. That's not good. We've moved beyond that. You don't have to do that in Facebook anymore, because ultimately Facebook has moved on from being a PPC platform that was making interest groups to hopefully grab Google advertisers by knocking off affinity models and affinity audiences. And we moved past act-alike audiences with Facebook's lookalike. We don't need any of that anymore, because every ad is making its own audience, and ultimately Facebook's machine learning builds on every penny that we spend. So the idea of having an overly complicated campaign is basically saying, how much wasteful spend can I afford because my performance is good today and I don't care about being successful tomorrow? Other things we have in here is CAPI. If you don't have conversions API attached, that's tragic. You should get it done. If you don't know how to do it, pay somebody to do it. You need to make sure that you are passing back the highest quality and highest volume information to the system as you possibly can, because Facebook is ultimately a machine learning platform. Every penny you spend on it makes the machine smarter. It's making decisions for you on a regular basis and doing the work that you tell it to do. Remember, Facebook is your employee. The ads manager is a middle management employee that you've trained. If you have to micromanage that ads manager and ultimately try to control everything that happened, at best, you are looking at data that you already know you can't trust, that is not up to date, that is incomplete, to make predictions on the future based on data points from the past in audiences that change constantly, and ultimately make everything that you do after the click far more difficult. That's a terrible way. No place in business, when you actually line it up, that makes 0 sense for anything that you would ever do in the real world. Why are you doing it on Facebook? And part of that is making sure that the data that Facebook does see is as strong as possible. That is the Conversions API. That is CAPI. We've been preaching that since 2018. You absolutely need to get that installed. And I highly recommend, not only do you have CAPI, but do offline conversions as well. Upload as much information as you can. Get the data set inside the platform to be as actionable as possible. Get it as much stuff. If you're doing lead gen, don't just pass back that a lead occurred. Pass back that a lead occurred. Oh, they opened up their email. Oh, they took a phone call. Oh, they booked a booking call. Oh, they showed up to that call. Oh, they bought in. Oh, they got a subscription. Pass all that information back, because those are all very valuable things for us to make decisions on. And the machine can use all of that information. If you're running it and you're saying, well, Facebook's only seeing some purchases and not seeing others, remember, Facebook is seeing everything that you send them. If they're not seeing it, it's because you're not sending it to them. Also, they're probably not going to be able to show you everything because of privacy concerns, but you can go to the event match rate score inside of Facebook and make sure that it's as high as possible. I can tell you how many businesses I see struggle with their event match rate. It's like 40, 50%. If it's not at least an 80 or a 90, you're doing something tragically wrong. And that's a very big problem. Part of the simplistic ad account and CAPI is the learning phase. Now, we've had a lot of debate over the learning phase over many, many years. If you know my opinion about it, it's that basically you should respect it outright. And back in the day, when you would get your account audited by Facebook, they would give you a score. If you are over 20% in the learning phase, that's a pretty big liability. Now, what does this actually mean for you? The learning phase is Facebook's way of saying, do we have statistical significance to deliver a consistent result with the assets that we have? If the answer is no, then that ad set is in learning. How much spend, what percentage of your daily budget is being spent to try to leverage assets that Facebook doesn't have confidence on delivering you a consistent result? Especially if Facebook's entire value to your business is the amplification of the volume and quality of a consistent type of user to deliver a business result that you are planning for weeks and months and years ahead on the results of. Like, if you can't consistently control that information, then it's going to be bad for you. The more spend you have in the learning phase, the worse off you are. That's a very general statement, and it holds true about 90% of the time. There are obviously exceptions to the rule, short-term sales, all sorts of other stuff. But at the end of the day, understand that the percentage of money that you're currently spending that's in the learning phase is the percentage of money that you are playing the lottery with. That's not good for business. The other side of this is just creative diversity. Facebook has been saying this for years. I've been preaching to this for years. And I don't see any reason why folks still assume that, well, UGC works well for us. We're just going to bunch UGC. Great. Who are you targeting? Only people that open that UGC content. What if I have my sound off? What if I don't watch videos? If I only want to look at the images, you'll never target me. What if you're only using images? What if I want to watch the video? The point is, your ads are creating bespoke audiences for themselves. And you're going to hear a lot of the experts pontificate on why the diversity matters. And they should be appealing to different people, and that makes sense. But really the reason is because every ad has an estimated action rate based on who that ad appeals to, based on its own bespoke audience. If the ads that you have an extremely high overlap of that bespoke audience, can be very efficient, but unable to reach any new people. And if they're all wildly different, you might reach a whole ton of people at a very low efficiency. Now, if you have any questions on that stuff, please ask, reply below, let me know what it is, tell your friends about this stuff, and sign up for the newsletter, because I think it's going to be really, really helpful for you. Next thing that I want to talk about, and this is a really big deal, is creator content. Now, back in the day, in 2016 and 2017, this was celebrity endorsements, and then it was influencer. We called it whitelisting. If you go back, you'll find a great chat from 2018 at Shopify, where I basically lay out this whole plan. Shopify LA with Common Thread Collective, and at the time, Nick Shackelford and Savannah Sanchez were there. And I basically laid out the entire influencer whitelisting strategy that, well, people have been selling and preaching for years, as a question as to why they were doing a link click campaign instead of using chatbots. That's a whole other side note. The point here is you should be using content from creators beside yourself. People that make content unlike you. Now, remember, we talked about diversity in creative is very important. But it's not just that, well, we have some images, so let's do some video. It's also remembering that every ad makes its own bespoke audience. That means that if you're creating content, your target market, the people that actually see your ads, the target market that you're actually reaching, is only the folks that respond to your type of messaging and the folks that are willing to respond to your page's content. Now, there's different thoughts. At the end of the day, I don't really think that the page an ad comes from is the reason that somebody stops their thumb. I don't really think that the account name matters nearly as much. But what does matter is that account's relationship to Facebook. If an account is making highly engaging content and Facebook knows who responds positively to that content, then that content made by that account is going to have a higher quality bespoke audience per piece of content. Now, that's going to happen, one, because maybe there's way more data points. Two, that might also be a highly curated style of content. Like, for instance, BuzzFeed nailed this. Not only did they get so good at it, but they made like little shows like the Try Guys and everything. So now anybody in that universe can promote something. And it's not just that the Try Guys are trying it. It's that if it's on brand for what they're doing, that user base has already been qualified in Facebook's algorithm as being receptive to that type of content from that page. And that gets you a much higher estimated action rate, which means you're going to be paying far lower cost on the inventory and getting better placement in the algorithm. The big side of this that I don't see anybody ever talking about is, where do you actually show up on the feed? Is it 15 minutes into a doom scroll and hey, look, there's an impression? Or is it, I go to my app and I hit open and then let's see, boom, what do I got? I got something, ad. What's that ad? Well, this one happens to be for Topo Chico. Somebody's Topo Chico. They got their meme game on point. Awesome. That's great. What that means is that Topo Chico ad, which is like the third or fourth piece of content, Topo Chico's almost overwhelmingly paying much lower for that inventory than the person that's 20 minutes into a doom scroll. Their CPMs are probably way less. And that impression is also far more impactful to me. It's the old school thinking of above the fold versus below the fold placement for advertising. Whitelisted creators that are on brand, that create content that people regularly engage with, if they also do a very good job, and this is an important deal when qualifying them, if they do a really good job of creating content that looks and feels the same, that attracts the same type of person, and you're able to tap into that customer avatar as being somebody that you want to reach with something that is something that they will respond positively to, then that ad is getting shown above the fold. It's a very different thing for instance, I did a Kris Jenner ad. We paid her $100,000. And then we took that ad and blasted it to everybody. Outside of Kris Jenner's own audiences, those ads didn't do well. Now, part of it was because it was Kris Jenner, but part of it was also because it was incredibly off-brand for her. And because it was off-brand, we were trying to show content that people didn't necessarily want to see to people that didn't engage with the type of content that we were showing them, to sell a product that didn't relate to the identity and the data set that that account had curated for itself. We were doing, meal replacement shakes. That wasn't a brand. And we failed. I still, to this day, that was in 2018, maybe. I don't know that we made our $100,000 back. Now, mind you, I've also done other deals where we paid somebody like $500 and made millions off of it. So this is a starting point. But the idea behind whitelisting is not just that you're getting other people to make creative. Yes, you're outsourcing the creative development. And yes, you're getting a lot of different looks and feels and stuff. But you're also tapping into the data that account has, which has a lot of value in putting your thumb on the scale of estimated action rate. So you have to remember all of this stuff. Now, when you're doing whitelisting, and I don't see this talked about nearly enough, but make sure you get rights to that page so you can delete bad comments. And if you want to kind of jumpstart some stuff, you can always take that content and target fans of that page. Or if you really want to get sexy with it, you could find creators that are sort of friends or famous for the same reason. There was a period of time where I was doing a lot of influencer whitelisting back in 2017, 2018, 2019 with reality TV show stars. Now, I was doing something at the time with a lot of folks from Real Housewives. I generally had 2 or 3 housewives from every series, right? So I had some from New Jersey. We had some from Beverly Hills. We had 1 or 2 from Atlanta. The point was, if you watched that show, you were probably a fan of a couple of those people. And when I take every one of those individuals and I target their fans and their friends of fans, you start to see content all year long, because as soon as that's showing off the air, as soon as Beverly Hills went off the air, I would launch the New Jersey one or the Manhattan one, whatever. You would start to see this overlapping storytelling of a bunch of creators where, remember, every ad creates its own bespoke audience and every page creates its own identity. When the Venn diagram of all of that user information has a very nice cross-section, you're going to be able to get great efficiencies. When the cross-section is maybe 50-50, but you're reaching a broad group of individuals, you might not get the same low CPA, but you might be able to spend twice as much or 10 times as much. So when you're getting into this stuff, it's not just pick creators to make fun content. Yes, you should do that. And if you're getting people to make content for you, go for it. But if you're going to go the route of whitelisting influencers and celebrities, which I highly recommend, if you can afford it, and celebrities aren't that expensive, especially if they're complimentary, you're going to get your money back if it's on brand. But you have to be able to protect the brand and then force multiply those efforts with each other. The last thing I'll say about that is that you have to remember what type of customer are you ultimately building for yourself. We think of influencers as like, oh, they appeal to so-and-so and, oh, they've got this type of audience. What about you? Where is that cross-section complementary to you? And if you're going to reach out to new influencers, because you're using this idea of making creators and using their content, how are they complementary to what you're doing? And if they're not, if they're completely coincidental, if they're the exact same type of thing, maybe that's a great way of just outsourcing your own creative department. Or if they're completely off the wall and brand new, maybe that's a great way of grabbing new attention. And you'll probably be able to spend a lot, but you probably won't be able to see that thing come in at a massive efficiency gain over what you're currently doing. Which brings you to the point of trying to strategize efficiency versus scale. If you have any questions about this stuff, please don't forget to comment below. Sign up to the newsletter at newsletter.facebookdisruptor.com. If you really want to dive into it, mba.facebookdisruptor.com is everything that you're ever going to need to know. Now, the last thing that we're going to touch on this, and I teased it a little bit beforehand, so we're going to get right into it. Lift studies. Now, I've been doing lift studies with Facebook since maybe 2013. And I highly recommend that you do them. And we've talked about this a lot. Now, what's mentioned in the Performance 5 is a CAPI conversion lift. Which is great. This is basically saying, can we prove that showing people ads made a lift in sales? Now, let me pull back the curtain and let you know the answer to that question is going to be yes. Not just because Facebook is doing the study, but just in general. You're advertising to a broad audience. Did that help awareness and growth for your business? Yes, that's Facebook's core business model. That's they're the best at the world at. Nothing has ever been greater than Facebook at doing that job at scale in the history of humanity ever. So what's the value? Well, there's a couple of things. One, the reports you get back from Facebook are incredibly detailed. And you're going to be able to understand where you have opportunity. Where are you strong? Where is your content delivered to? And ultimately, what can you do over the next 3 to 6 months, 9 months, or a year to start taking advantage of stuff? Now, mind you, this conversion lift study, this CAPI lift study, has no impact on your business if you're not simple. If you're still using audiences, this is basically useless. Because as soon as you change interest groups, or your lookalike audience, or you try different Shopify audience, well, now that data set is completely changed. If you're going at broad, this is tremendously valuable. A conversion lift study against broad says, what can you do better to take advantage of this opportunity? If you're changing your audience, that study only worked for that ad set you just turned off 3 weeks ago because it is exhausted. Because your ability to get lucky against that inventory basically ran out. All the low-hanging fruit was gone. So you basically took that money, you made some money on it, and then you set it on fire, and you went out to find the next thing to pillage and destroy. Because you're not actually building a business. You're getting the next short con to short con to short con to short con, and still looking at Facebook as like, why is it getting more expensive? Why is it unstable? Why do I have to work more than a couple hours a week? Why am I not able to trust it? Why is all this other stuff? And you're investing in these solutions that have nothing to do with long-term benefit. Now, maybe there are reasons that you're doing that because you need short-term gains, or maybe it's because there's a short little sale going on, or because you have a brand new account and you don't feel like you've got enough budget to go broad. My argument to that would be, do you have enough budget to not set yourself up for success in the future? Like, are you at such a point of volume of revenue that you don't actually need to invest your money with the effort of making money? The answer might be yes. I've done that. Managing Activision or Progressive Insurance or Disney or MGM Hotels, or bringing TRX to market or Persil laundry detergent to the United States. Yeah, I've done that because their objectives weren't making money. And to be fair, there are brands out there using your interest groups that are willing to spend $1 million a day just to get market research. And on days we're like, my audience isn't working well today, it might be because there's 10 other people like me just dropping 7-8 figures, just trying to be like, what does the audience say? And now you've got to compete with me, and I'm willing to pay 10 times as much as you are, and I don't even need to make money. So you've opened yourself up to this tremendously terrible data set, and you're trying to make decisions off of it. Now, when we're looking at this conversion lift study, and I teased this before, I'm going to get to it. You used to be able to do this on your own. Now you need some help. You know all those phone calls you've been getting from really annoying salespeople from Facebook marketing experts? This is a great opportunity. Ask them for this conversion lift study. Better yet, ask them for a power lift study. And I haven't seen anyone talking about this. And I've been watching Performance 5 videos since like May to see if anybody mentions it. Haven't heard it once. What's a power lift study? It's a brand lift plus conversion lift study to basically say, when we're advertising on Facebook, what's the overall lift to our brand awareness and sentiment? And then based on that, how much better is our conversions? On top of all of that stuff, what can we do to improve our ability to leverage that for monetization of that attention? Now, that's great information. And if you're running broad and you're doing concept testing and you're trying to leverage a hero product to build LTV, this is tremendously valuable. If you're still using ABO and interest groups and prospecting and retargeting and all of this other stuff, this is good. It'll make you look great to your boss, don't get me wrong. But it's not actionable. And it basically means you waste your time. And I'm done burying the lead. I'm going to finish burying it. And here we go. This is what really matters. When you start doing conversion lift studies and power lift studies and brand lift studies, what is that actually doing? One, it's giving you tremendous information. Two, it's getting you involved with multiple departments at Facebook. It's getting you to be somebody who's leaned into the betterment of the platform. And if, as a result of you doing that study, you're able to increase spend, and you're able to invest more resources, and probably the reason you're improving spend and able to invest more resources because you're making higher quality content, making better decisions, which ultimately gives a more desirable user experience to the Facebook user, which means they're able to retain consumer attention for longer and monetize that attention 10x against everybody else. They're tapping into fractional banking because you as an advertiser, because you're able to spend more, that means that you are less of a liability to them, because the reason you're able to spend more is because you're getting greater efficiency, because you're doing a better job at treating Facebook with respect as your business partner. I know there's a convoluted way around it, but understand, like, that's basically what happens, right? Either you get short-term con wins, which, you know, there are plenty of folks that still think Facebook is Google in 2006 and they're out to get you and they don't have any respect for you and they're not in business with you at all, and then complain about Facebook costs rising. And the first thing they do when they tell you how to improve your account is, we're going to test audiences and we're going to do all this other stuff, and you get great results with the lookalike or an interest group, and then it kind of dies off, and then maybe you need the next agency, and then because you weren't abusing all of your clients and building data for a couple of months, they come in with a sale
scale and then get more information. Then seasonality takes, they're just on this flywheel of new agency every 4 to 6 months. And everybody does great out of the gate. And then they shit the bed because nobody actually cares about you. Or you're doing better because you've gone to broad. You've taken these insights into account and Facebook sees that. Then what do? They open up their wallet and say, hey, we have something else. Thanks to this Powerlift study, we've seen that it's grown. Now, we would love for you to spend more. Would you do a dollar for dollar match on a $5,000 or $10,000 case study? Yeah, I'll do that. Now, it might be a complete change in your business, but it's free money. And if you get a 50% return on it, you broke even. What happens when you start taking free money from Facebook and start working with their product and engineering and marketing teams? Well, you become somebody they go to all the time. And you extrapolate that out over a long period of time, and you're going to start to see $10,000, $25,000, $100,000 case studies with Facebook. I've seen brands go from, we don't trust Facebook, it's incredibly unstable, and they're out to get us, to, we're getting $10,000 a month in case studies in a matter of like 7 or 8 months. What if you got 6 figures a year in supplemented spend and Facebook was working with you? How would that change your future? The path to making that happen is not ABO. The path to making that happen is not prospecting and retargeting campaign. The path to that happening is not having a testing campaign and a scaling campaign. The path to that is not testing a whole bunch of audiences and then trying to design content that works for that. No. The path to that is running a very simple account. We've talked about it. All you need is literally one campaign with broad targeting and dynamic creatives to improve the effectiveness of that broad targeting. Where you've got CAPI installed, Conversions API, and you have a diversity in your creative, where you are leveraging creators for you to bring you incrementality to your core business. And when those people call you and they're really annoying and all this stuff, those people that are trying to write you $10,000, $25,000 checks and they might not even know it. And you're just saying yes to every single one of them. That's how you put your thumb on the scale. That is how you massively amp up your business. That's what separates the people that preach victim mentality as a business model, i.e., literally anybody talking about ABO or interest groups or retargeting or any of this other nonsense, and brings you into the other space of, we're getting all of the things before Facebook makes it available. And we've got reps. And we're spending $100,000 a year or more of Facebook's money. And our business is doing really, really well. And it's a lot less work. At the end of the day, you have a choice. And I'll leave you with this. You can do what Facebook asks you to do. The Performance 5 is a modern adaptation of the Power 5, and I was there very specifically to test and evaluate how to make those things work. Me personally, advanced matching and CBO and dynamic ads. That's what I really helped push with a lot of case studies back in the day. And what do I preach all the time? Broad audiences, which leverages advanced matching. CBO, because ABO is dumb. And dynamic ads, DCTs and DPAs. To a greater extent, more recently, Advantage Plus, and we'll get into that stuff here pretty soon. You can lean into all of that. Or you can say, Facebook is out to get me. At which point, why are you running it anyway? If you're going to spend money on Facebook, wouldn't it behoove you to start using it properly? Instead of saying that they are abusers that you're empowering with your pocketbook because you need to. You don't need to. You don't like it? There's a lot of other places on the internet you can spend money. Facebook is very straightforward when they say how to use it in the best way. And the honest truth is, Performance 5 is probably the third big blueprint that I've seen in the last 10 years where Facebook says, use it this way, you're going to be better off. Overwhelmingly, the people that are very successful, and I'm not talking about the ad agencies that are spending other people's money, that land a couple clients that don't need them, that brag all the time. I'm talking about the brands that truly crush, where you don't even really ever see the people behind the curtain because they're just doing really good jobs. They're all doing this stuff. What's the big secret between the 8-figure business working its way to a 9-figure exit and you struggling at 6, even though you have the exact same everything? Maybe it's the way that you treat your business partner. Hey, so how Facebook works, or more importantly, why iOS 14 didn't really have nearly the level of impact that most people said. Yes, it did cause concern to folks, but we're going to get into why that happened and why it isn't an excuse that you should use anymore. And honestly, if it is a problem, what you can do to overcome that issue right now. That simple. So when you walk out of here, you're going to get one of 3 big things. Because we're going to cover the history behind how Facebook works with you. We're going to cover how it tracks information. We're going to cover the data set that they use inside of the auction as well as the optimized CPM environment. And then we're also going to get to iOS 14. But I said the 3 big things you're going to come away from this is, number 1, you are going to feel confident and no longer blaming iOS 14 and have an action plan to make your account better right away. Number 2 is, if anytime you see somebody says, well, iOS 14 is the reason we're having a problem and we're really struggling right now, you're going to be able to point to them and understand what they don't understand about Facebook ad platform and be able to help them out to make them better. And number 3, you're going to have the confidence to understand that actually the next couple of years is going to be one of, if not the greatest boom in e-commerce that we have ever seen on the back of Facebook ads. Let's go! First thing, I understand that people have had problems. I just want you to know that I'm super excited about the fact that they don't have to be problems. And number 2, I know you could be literally anywhere on the internet right now, but you've decided to pay attention to me. I'm going to try to not yell so much during this thing. I'm just super passionate about it because honestly, I've seen a lot of people, a lot of folks that I respect, blame iOS 14 for why they're not being successful, when really the issue is they never adopted the practices that are going to prevent iOS 14 from being a problem. And that's a really big issue. Primarily, to cover it right out of the gate, the number 1 reason that iOS 14 caused problem for advertisers is because they refused to do things the proper way for the several years leading up to the release of this. And here's a big thing that's going to drop. Google is going to do the exact same thing in a couple of weeks or months, or by the time you watch it, it might have already happened. So we're going to cover today, number 1, how to set up your account to not worry about it. Number 2, why that's not really a good excuse. And number 3, the actual quantifiable impact that we're going to see from all of it. So I really appreciate you being here through all of this stuff. Yes, I'm passionate about this stuff. I talk about it all the time. It's just what I do because your success is my objective. I want you to walk away feeling empowered and confident, understanding what it is that you should be doing to make the absolute best of your future in Facebook advertising. With that being said, subscribe if you love it. If you have questions or you want to call me out on something, do not be shy to comment or reply. I want to know, and suggest anything else that I might be covering. But let's get into it. So the first thing that we have to cover is the biggest data set that Facebook has on anybody, and that is your history with the platform. Now, when Facebook started, Facebook was designed as a PPC platform, a pay-per-click. Now, that meant that advertisers running Facebook ads, in order to grab people, Facebook designed it to operate and look and feel a lot like Google. And that's where interest groups come from, for instance. They're affinity audiences. Now, eventually, Facebook dropped the conversion pixel, moved to an optimized CPM environment, and completely abandoned interest groups for dev purposes. That was over 5 years ago. So when you're using interest groups, understand that you're using a piece of tech that hasn't been updated since before Trump came into office in America. That's how far back the technology you're using. And believe me, if you've ever tried to use technology that's 5 or 10 years old, it's not that good. Also, thousands of those interest groups are getting deprecated on a regular basis. If you're building your castle on sand, when the tide comes in and you have nothing left, it's not anybody but yourself to blame when you were left holding the bag with nothing to do. So we're going to really cover in that. So remember, the reason we got to this place is because Facebook was designed to replicate the way that Google worked. Then they invented a new environment for advertising and consumer experience to optimize the end user experience on the platform called OCPM. And since then, everything that they built before that was completely irrelevant. Sometimes they keep it around for legacy purposes, but at the end of the day, most of these things are severe liabilities to your success. That's not an opinion. That's a fact. Because at the end of the day, if your entire business is built on something that could disappear tomorrow, and probably will, sooner than later, you're not building a very sustainable business. And that's going to be a problem. So the first thing that Facebook has is your entire history. Now, the average person, the average American adult, let's go with that, has been on Facebook for almost 10 years, if not more. And in that 10 years, Facebook has seen all the pages you've liked, all the people that you've talked to. Facebook has seen all the pages that you've engaged with, all the groups that you've joined, all the words that you've sent to people 9 years ago, 10 years ago, from somebody like me, maybe 11 or 12 or 13 years ago, and what you've done today. Facebook still knows the pages you engage with, what videos you're watching, the messages you're sending to your friends on Instagram and on Facebook and on WhatsApp. They know all the words you're using. They know all the links that you're sending. They know all the videos that you're watching. They know the pages that you engage with. So Facebook has a decade-long, nearly profile of who you are. And they understand your behavior and what it takes for you to want to do a certain thing. Like maybe I'm somebody that needs to see an ad 50 times before they get a conversion, but I'm going to start thinking about it 2 months in advance, versus you might be somebody totally different. But Facebook has this user profile on literally billions of people around the entire world. And why that really matters is because it's a machine learning algorithm. They can look at that near decade on average of data from at least the United States of adult users and understand what gets them to do a certain thing. If they didn't, you wouldn't still be on Facebook anymore, because they use this technology to make sure that you engage with people in a way that makes you want to come back, and that you engage in the platform in a way that makes you feel good or bad or whatever, but you're getting a dopamine or serotonin hit and you come back. Facebook's exceptionally good at this. And there's no reason in the world to think, well, they're really good at the organic side, and Instagram is great at showing me things. And of course, when I click on something during Christmas on one drop shipping offer, I'm tracked by a million things, but also the targeting is complete trash and the system's completely broken. Those two things aren't in alignment. Either it's complete trash and totally broken, or you log on to it all the time, and every time you go to any product or anything else, you're flooded with things exactly like it. Now, the reason you're flooded with it is because the optimized CPM environment, a thing called advanced matching that comes from the Power 5 that was invented in 2017. You should really dive into a lot of that. We had the Disruptor Group did over $100 million in testing to help you 5 years ago know what you're supposed to do. And I've been teaching that for years and years and years ever since. Second thing that Facebook looks at, your current activity. What pages are you clicking on? What words are you using? What websites have you been to? Now, I know iOS 14, and look, we're going to get there. But what pages, ads are you clicking on? Maybe you're clicking on an ad from Adidas that features a certain product that has certain descriptions and comes from a dynamic product newsfeed, so they have the entire catalog description of it. Maybe you're cycling through things. Maybe every time you've done this before, you're most likely to do something like this, and you've established that trend of a behavior because Facebook knows who you are over the last 5-10 years, right? Maybe you've been conditioned to behave in a certain way, and really it's just a mirror of who you are. So when you've taught Facebook, the machine learning platform, to understand how you behave you continue to behave that way, and it understands how to manipulate you or give you what it is that you're asking for to deliver the result that you want, right? Because ultimately, if it didn't, you wouldn't use it, right? Your customers wouldn't use it. There wouldn't be billions of people. And before you say this, yes, Facebook stopped growing. You know who else stopped growing? Google. 20 years ago. Are they dead? No. You know what else stopped growing? Email. Almost 30 years ago, right? Basically, the only real adoption change that has happened in the tech, sorry, that's like 25 years ago, is that more and more people got email accounts. But like Gmail as a user base peaked a generation ago. The tech hasn't evolved in 25 years, really, right? Search is basically search. Now, the tech behind the ad units has changed a little bit, but that's not what people are complaining about when they say, well, Facebook stopped growing because they basically became a standard for literally every person on the planet with a smartphone. Not everybody. Clearly not everybody has it. I'm being a little hyperbolic there. I'm going to call myself out for it. But here's the point. Facebook's projection this year, they fell short. Now you hear you saying out there, well, the guy said iOS 14. Yeah, iOS 14, because of the implication and people's misuse of the ad tech, caused severe problems for some advertisers to spend appropriately. Same thing happened in 2018. Same thing happened in 2015. Same thing happened in 2010 or 2011. When they added new tech, it became disruptive. They lost some advertisers. And what happened the next year? A boom in spend. What are we seeing already since 2022 versus 2021? Increased spend on Facebook. Globally speaking, they're getting more ad dollars than they used to. Now, that's a trend. It's a projection. I get that. But literally every single time that there's been a disruptive change in the ad tech, there was a push and a growth in the overall spend on the platform every year afterward. That's a fact. Again, objective fact, not an opinion. That's backed by literally every data point available to the public about that matter. So, moving forward, one, I want to tell, we're going to address, that was the history of what Facebook has on you, and that's the current activity. Facebook also knows what you're clicking on, right? Facebook knows what content you're clicking on, what type of content you're clicking on, whose content you're clicking on, right? Again, maybe you're clicking on Nike's ads. Maybe you're clicking on Pizza Hut ads. Maybe you're clicking on some direct consumer thing, like you're really into, I don't know, some brand. I was about to name a bunch, but I don't want to call everybody out. Let's just say the bunch of things that you thoroughly enjoy. What do you see? More stuff like that, right? Even when you're on Amazon looking for stuff, or maybe Google things, your feed starts to feel like, hey, Facebook knows what I want. It's showing me more things. If your experience is anything like that, then you can't then also say, hey, Facebook is broken. Some people know how to use it. Some people don't. We're going to fix all of that. The last thing that we have to address here that's really important is banking data and backend shared data, where literally almost every e-commerce platform and network shares this information left, right, and center. So let's take an average user experience. Say you logged on, you got a Facebook account in 2010, okay? So you've had a Facebook account for 12 years. You might have literally clicked on content from 1,000 different web pages, Facebook pages. You might have made a couple hundred or a couple thousand friends and unfriended them along the way. You might have started an Instagram account and engaged with 10 or 100,000 or 1,000,000 pieces of content by now. The like button, reading the description, watching videos, sharing things, messaging people. So you've got 12 years of what amounts to 10, 100 million data points that Facebook can understand your consumer behavior and what you want to see, and also what's most likely to get you to take a desired action that you are happy with and come back for more. Remember, if you didn't like ads, you could X out of them all the time, and you know what? You're less likely to see ads. And if you didn't like content, you know what? you would delete your Facebook account. But the fact is, you probably aren't that person. And the fact is, 95% of users are also not that person. So the overwhelming majority of users, let's say, are like this. Let's say they started their Facebook account in 2012. We have a decade of thousands of Facebook pages and maybe over 100 million data points of stuff you've done just on Facebook and inside of their environment with WhatsApp and Instagram and Facebook and Messenger, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now Facebook says, well, you know, every spring you seem to look at flowers, right? And you're searching at stuff. Well, we know what pages you've interacted with for the last 7 years. We know about the time that you're coming into that stuff. We know roughly the kinds of things that you're leaning into. We know roughly the kind of content that you've been really enjoying lately. And we know that you've also purchased from these thousands or hundreds of web pages over that decade because the Facebook pixel's been placed on all of that and your credit card data said so. Now, they're never matching this back to you personally. It's all hashed information. But your MAC address, credit card, the payments you've done on all of the apps on your phone, because you probably let Facebook track all of your apps and your location and the access to your images and your videos and all of those things on your phone. And then you got iOS 14 and you're like, well, Facebook can't see me anymore. Really? Does iOS 14 block what you're doing on Facebook? No. Does iOS 14 block seeing the messages that you send on Messenger? No. Does iOS 14 block the content that you watch on Instagram? No. Does iOS 14 prevent Facebook from understanding content you click on? No. Does iOS 14 block Facebook from seeing you clicked on an ad from Nike, left Facebook, kept it open, but left, came back 15, 20 minutes later. The next day you clicked on a Reebok ad, left, did whatever, came back. Let's say they can't see anything that you've ever done on the web page. They know all the pages that you're clicking on. They know all the videos that you're watching. They know what you're trying to do on your phone, right? And most importantly, when you make purchases, Facebook knows. This data has been passed back and forth for like a decade. You used to literally be able to tap into it as a targeting audience on Facebook. Back when I started, that was totally an option. You used to be able to do that on Google too. Now Facebook doesn't let you target people because of that, but do you think that means that they don't have it? Really? Let me help you out. Because I have friends in the engineering department and I've literally helped Facebook put together creative testing at CBO and advanced matching. That was the part of the disruptive group testing that I was a part of. Facebook can see all of that. Facebook knows what's in the background of the videos that you're watching. Facebook can identify that, hey, that's a Steelers hat. That's a terrible towel, right? They might know this is a fucking whiteboard. They know this is a Van Halen shirt. They probably know 1,000 websites selling this kind of content right now. This product right now. Facebook probably knows, oh, this wedding ring came from a certain place. Facebook knows that's this type of plant, right? Or something along those lines. They know that this lamp came from IKEA, right? It's been in enough videos, Facebook can identify it. The AI has been able to do that for 5 years now. So my point is, do you really think iOS 14 is blocking everything? Because here's what the algorithm is bringing into when it's trying to understand what impression to give somebody. Let's go through the algorithm at a very high level, but also somewhat detailed. Number one, what is this person likely to engage with, right? What type of content have they engaged with? What type of words are they using? What other pages have they clicked on their content or followed? Or what type of images or videos has been on their Instagram reel? Why is their discover section of their Instagram reel section so attuned to them? Because they know what you're doing, right? What about this person has happened lately? Second, what behavior is this person showing right now, at least, that lets us know what they may or may not be interested in? What behavior can get somebody to take a specific action? Well, maybe over that decade, Facebook knows that, well, when it's springtime, end of winter, when it's beginning of February, this person's likely to buy some flowers around the 1st to the 5th. Who do you think is going to see an ad for flowers on that day? The person that's never bought them before, or the person that's bought them every year beforehand? What if you need 3 to 5 ads to get it? What if you need 30? What if they already know that you buy from 100 flowers every time? Whose content do you think you're going to see? Even though you don't like the page, you've never followed the page, you've never engaged with it other than to buy it on a regular basis, basically the same week every single year. Do you think Facebook just doesn't care about that? It's sort of like this, quote from Dr. Dre. It's like, what do you think? What do you think of my guns? What do you think? I ain't got none? Do you think I sold them all? No, still got them. Facebook still has the data. So why wouldn't they use it? I can tell you for a fact that they do. So Facebook has this entire history of who you are, right? So we have the current activity that you're taking, plus your entire history, maybe 10, maybe 100 or 1,000,000 data points or more to understand how to get you in a conversation to get you to a certain place, how to prime you for a certain action, knowing what type of content you like. Maybe your type of content changes because of the people that you're around. Maybe your friends have changed your behavior. Maybe you got married. Maybe you got divorced. Maybe you had kids. Maybe you moved. Maybe you graduated. Maybe you changed political parties or got tattoos or whatever. Facebook knows. You've told it most of those things, right? They're memories, right? They're announcements, right? They're connections that you're making with people, right? Your phone has been in proximity of these other people. They're also doing all these other things. Facebook knows that. So they have your current activity. They have these hundreds of millions of data points to prime you for something. Plus, they know what your entire social network is doing. After all of that, they also know the things that you're buying on the majority of websites that you've ever bought anything on, and you put ad blockers on so Facebook doesn't know what you're doing today, but they know what you purchased. And that information can absolutely be tracked back to your user experience. Then we get into iOS 14 blocks this little piece. So moving across the screen, like trying to understand, Facebook sees all your entire history at the very, very, very end of this conversation, right? The very, very end. Like the last 2% of the last 3% of the last 1/4 of anything that could possibly matter. iOS 14 is blocking what you're doing on the page. Well, clearly that means Facebook is broken. The point here is iOS 14's data blocking isn't hurting Facebook from giving you an experience designed to deliver you the type of platform experience that you've told it you want. And most importantly, what this means is broad targeting allows the ad to define its own lookalike audience of people that also behave. If a whole bunch of people with 1,000,000 different profiles all behaved in a similar way, who do you think Facebook's going to show that ad to next? Somebody that looks like those people and behaves like them, that has a pretty high confidence is going to deliver a desired result somewhere down the way. And whatever that person's customer journey needs to be to deliver a desired action to the advertiser so that they want. Remember, every ad basically makes its own lookalike audience. That's, again, not an opinion. That's empirical fact. That's an analogy, but that's 100% what happens. That's why broad targeting works. Because broad just basically says, hey, Facebook, I'm not going to prevent you from showing this impression to the right person. Now, instead, you can say interest groups.
Oh, this person's interested in something. Now, they might be interested in a positive way or in a negative way. I don't care. They might hate something and talk about how much they hate it every single day. Well, they're interested in it. I'm going to show them an ad. And more importantly, what that interest group really is it's the entire microcosm of the all available impressions and saying, all right, I want to pay more money to make my ad only appear to these people. Whether they like it or not, I'm going to try to let Facebook, the circle of the lookalike audience, right? Let's pretend it's a giant circle. Facebook, I want you to target only the people where in that interest group, let's call that also a circle, where the Venn diagram of that entire ad's lookalike audience also happens to cross into that interest group. And then you say, hey, that's working great. Let me throw more money at it. What happens? Eventually you run out of people in that Venn diagram. And then you just start showing ads to people that don't really give a fuck. And then what happens? Well, one, you're paying extra money to prevent those ads from reaching people who would absolutely be interested. And two, you're giving people a really bad experience. You're forcing your ads on people that aren't interested at all. So you're lowering your page score and raising your average CPM across your entire account. Are your CPMs $30, $40, $50, $60? Are you running only broad audiences? Are you specifically doing creative testing, primarily with dynamic ads, to solve specific business problems of trying to either make a certain sales pitch better or reach a different type of person because your ads do the targeting? No? Maybe that's why. The bottom line here is this. iOS 14 was a bad week and a half. After that, what we saw was a decimation of the people that disrespected the customer from having the same results that they did before. Because Facebook's response to that, especially with aggregated events manager and everything else, wasn't just that, oh, we're struggling showing ads to people. Facebook also made a very specific point, and they publicly spoke about this, which apparently every media buyer willing to blame iOS 14 just doesn't know what happened or is completely willing to ignore it, forgot about it. But they made a very specific point several times since to say that the end user experience is more important than ever. Whether that's their doubling down on Reels, or saying that Instagram is a video-only platform, or saying that Facebook is about communities. What does all that mean? All that means is Facebook saying, well, these are the things that people like. So we're going to prioritize those things over something else. And what that really means is, if you don't care about our users, we don't care about you. So your plan moving forward needs to be as fast as possible to move yourself away from things that disrespect your customer and disrespect Facebook. No partnership is strong because one partner in that relationship, you and Facebook, where one side of it is wildly disrespectful to the other. Those things don't last. The reason that Facebook hacks don't work is because they're meant to circumvent this. Lookalike audiences and cost cap and all of these other things that totally can work, and I'm not saying you shouldn't use them. There's an appropriate use for them. But it doesn't mean they're the best thing for everything. Most of the time, these are incremental options to an environment that is stable and proven. So ultimately, what you need to do is decide, are you going to continue to work harder and harder to pay more and more money to make it more and more difficult for your ad to reach the right person while disrespecting your customer and then complaining that Facebook is more and more expensive? Or are you going to adopt broad? Start using dynamic ads for your testing and move into the warm future for everybody else that's going to have tremendous success in the years to come. That's really your choice. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm just here to tell you that if you want to stop being stressed out and unsuccessful, and you want to stop being a victim of iOS 14, the most empowering thing you can do for yourself is give a fuck about the other person, the other end of your ad.